Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Tammy Lyons, Senior Marketing Manager at Weave. I would like to thank you for joining today's webinar, Streamlining IND Submissions with AutoIND. We have an exciting session planned and can't wait to share valuable insights and answer your questions. Without further ado, let me turn it over to today's speaker, Weave's Chief Product Officer, Brandon Rice. Brandon, take it away.
All right. Thanks, Tammy. Appreciate it. And it's nice to be here and to be able to speak to everyone about Weave. As Tammy mentioned, I'm Brandon. I'm Chief Product Officer at Weave. I've been working in life science startups for the past couple of years, building products and services for mostly drug companies, and for the past couple of years at Weave. And I'm excited to tell you all today about what we've been up to, building, and our experiences with some of our earliest customers. So this is what I will be going over today. I'm going to tell you first a little bit about the company, some background on the company. I will then tell you about our first product, which is AutoIND. And then I have two case studies that I'm going to share. One is with one of our very earliest customers, who is a very small company doing their first IND. And the other is some project that we're doing with one of the top 20 pharma. And then we'll wrap up with some Q&A at the end. If, as I go through things, you have any questions you'd like to ask, please go ahead and enter those into the Q&A box, which you'll see on the bottom of your screen as I'm showing in the screenshot here. So first, let me tell you about us, about Weave and who we are. So the company was begun back in March of 2022, right at the beginning of the LLM era, as it were, and everything that we've been doing has really been built around AI and large language models in particular. We properly began the development of our platform in January of 2023. And that got us to a commercial launch in April of 2024, so just earlier this year. At this point, we have multiple biotech INDs that are actively being prepared in the platform, some of our first customers. We've got several pharma pilots that are underway as well. And I'll be talking about one of those biotech INDs and one of those pharma pilots today. This is our leadership team. What we hope that you take away from this is not our first rodeo. We're company builders, folks with experience in life sciences, technology, drug development, and drug discovery. And we're trying to bring together all of our experiences and knowledge to bear on this challenge at Weave, which is automating and streamlining the preparation of regulatory filings. Not shown on this slide is also the absolutely wonderful team that has built the product, software engineers, product managers, designers, who are all of whom have a singular focus, just the same as the leadership team, which is very eager to solve meaningful problems and build for our customers. So I want to start first with the problem that we're trying to solve. And that problem is that regulatory processes in drug development are entirely manual. And the reason that is problematic is that it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to produce these filings. You know, what we've heard from many of our customers is that in the very best case, you can get an IND prepared in 3 months once you have all of your documents pulled together. If there's any unforeseen circumstances, it can take a lot longer than that. And if you don't have an internal team to work on the IND, then you're going to be outsourcing that to consultants often, and that can routinely costs up well into the 6 figures to get that done. And so that means a lot of time being spent here, resources being spent to pull the IND together. And with any manual process, there's also a potential for errors. And that is very risky when it comes to your regulatory filings. So there's a lot of different ways that these manual processes impact kind of the overall well-being and trajectory of the business. And so after some time kind of exploring the problems that were present in drug development, this is the one that we landed on. And what we're trying to do to solve that is we're trying to augment humans with AI. So here's the very simple before and after picture for us, the world as we see it. When it comes to regulatory, up to this point, humans have been doing everything, taking the reports, drafting the reports, extracting data from them, filling in tables, summarizing and summarizing and summarizing. And what we'd like to do and what we are endeavoring to do here at Weave is to enable humans to focus on what they do best and what only they can do. And I think this is a very important stage to set for the rest of my talk here. The AI, large language models, it's not a technology that is in a place now and may very well never be in a place to replace humans whole cloth. There is judgment, strategy, narrative, interpretation of data. All of these are things that certainly today are still best left to humans. And what we want to do is enable people to focus on those things and let the AI take care of the rest. The extraction of information from study reports, organizing all of the source data, creating the initial summaries and the tables and filling that in, and generally just pulling the package together. Let the people focus on the thinking, the strategizing, the judgment that is required to make a very high quality and compelling IND or regulatory filing. The product that we've built to enable that is called AutoIND. And here again, AI enabled, human driven. This is at the core of what we were trying to do. And it's a misapprehension that a lot of folks have before we come and talk to them the first time that AI is here to replace people or to where you can kind of push a button and get something out the other side. That is not what we're trying to build. We're trying to build tools to augment people and keep humans at the center of the picture. So this is what your IND can look like on AutoIND. So everything you see here in pink are parts of the workflow that we currently support in AutoIND, which is the vast majority of it. We don't yet support publishing, although that is something that we're working on right now and anticipating to have a first version of that early next year. But as soon as you are at a stage of candidate nomination, which is often years before you're properly ready to begin drafting and submit your IND, all the way through certainly drafting and review and finalization of the content before you go into publishing. All of these are things that we can support in AutoIND. Some of them are more or less mature, and I'm going to go through a few examples of the ways that we can help with these different aspects of the workflow momentarily. So a first way is when it comes to planning and organizing your IND. So this is not necessarily a very AI heavy part of the process here, but just getting your ducks in a row, understanding what data you have, what you still need, which parts of the dossier that you're ready to draft or which ones you still need data for is a task in itself. And there aren't many purpose-built tools out there to help with that. And the place a lot of people start is with Word document templates from consultants or other vendors, just to help them start to frame the application and think about what they need and what's going to go into that. That's all built right in to AutoIND. So you're not, even before you're getting to the drafting, you're not starting with a blank page. You're starting with the ECTD, which is built right into the product. So all 5 modules, every document, section, subsection that you're going to need is already present. And so the framework into which all of your content is going to have to drop is already there to help you start thinking about how you're going to approach the drafting. And as you start to pull data in to AutoIND and get it organized, we provide a very clear picture of where you are at any given moment. So we'll tell you which sections you've already begun to draft, which ones are still yet to come, which data you need in order to get going on any given section. And we're building increasingly sophisticated gap analysis in that way to help. Right now, we'll show you just for any given section, here are the source documents you need or the source data that you need in order to be able to draft content in this section. As we go forward, we're incorporating more and more guidance into that process. So we can tell you not only what do you have and what do you need to draft, but also for your modality, what kind of data do you need or what is expected by the agency. So here, before we've even begun drafting, we're trying to help you think about and plan the IND, get your data together, understand what you have and what you still need and what you're missing. Then, of course, once you're ready to draft, that is where the kind of first big hurdle is, psychologically as well as time. Staring at a blank page and getting going is a massive barrier for a lot of people. And this is, as far as the company goes, Weave and the product, this is actually where we began our development, was focused on the drafting. And over time, we've incorporated more functionality to address other aspects of the workflow. But when it comes to drafting, the very first draft is a push button exercise in AutoIND. So we have templates that are built into the system that we've created based off of FDA guidance, based off of examples that we've seen. And so when it comes time to produce your first draft, there's nothing to do except upload your source documents and press a button. Now, all of those templates can be customized. So if what you see in your first draft is not exactly what you need or what you're looking for the way you'd like it, all of that can be customized in the templates. And so if you're going through multiple INDs throughout the life of your company, those can be very consistent if they're using the same templates, and those can be customized to the way that your organization wants to produce its INDs. And they can be customized to particular TAs or modalities, or in whatever dimension you need them customized. Today, the modules in which we can generate content include everything in Module 2, excuse me. So that includes all the non-clinical summaries, the QoS, as well as the clinical summaries there. We can draft content in all of Module 3, and we can draft the investigator's brochure in Module 1. So all of those are supported today in AutoIND. They all have baseline templates that'll get you started that you can then take and further customize and tailor to your use case. After you've pushed the button and gotten your first draft, and that just takes a matter of minutes to produce that first draft, it is just a first draft, and you're going to have to put additional work into it to refine it, ensure that it is the most compelling narrative, that it's aligned with your company's strategy for your IND. And so there is additional effort that's going to invariably be required after that first draft. And we have tools to help with those subsequent drafts as well. So we have a tool called AI refinement, where after you've produced that first draft, you're going to look at some of the content, the summaries, and you're going to say, I think this one's a little bit too much detail. This one's not enough. We need to incorporate certain details here or elaborate further on the methodology there. And those are all things that you can deal with instantly using AI refinement. So you just select the passage that you want to improve. You provide your instruction to the AI about what you want, more detail, less detail, different structure, and it's going to iterate. It's going to produce another draft. It's going to show that to you. You can decide if that's going in the right direction or not, try again, and in that way, kind of gradually refine the content to get it to the place that you're happy with. And then once you've got that as far as you can get, and so you're, maybe 90-95% of the way there with your content, there's a built-in document editor, and you can then go in and do the direct manual editing of the content to get it all the way over the finish line. Along the way, obviously, it's a collaborative process. You're going to have folks who need to review the content, provide input and feedback. We can accommodate reviews within the product as new source documents come through, as your study reports go from being drafts to final versions. You're going to have to update content. We have facilities in the product to help with that, auto update. You just replace an original source document with a new one. We will point out to you where the content needs to be updated or changed, and we'll even make recommendations for how you can change it. In all of this, we're producing text, tables. The only type of content that we're not working with at the moment is images. We can accommodate images. You can upload them into the product. You can incorporate them into your submission documents. We're just not yet automatically extracting them from source documents, although that will be coming soon. So this is drafting, and that is obviously a huge part of the IND preparation process and the most mature part of our product when it comes to that process. And then the third and final piece that I'll mention for now is data verification. So you've gone through planning and organizing, then drafting your content, iterating on that, having the team work on it, review it, and get it to a place where you're happy with the narrative that it represents, the strategy that's the most compelling possible story that you can tell to regulators about your drug. And then in the final stage here, you want to ensure that everything is completely accurate. And this takes on a special importance when it comes to AI drafted content. And certainly early on for us, this is one of the things that folks were most concerned about. Is the content accurate? How do we know? We've done our own studies of that and have found that it is as accurate as a human first draft is when it comes to accuracy. But we don't want anyone to take our word for it. And regardless of who drafted it, whether it was AI or a person, when you get to data verification, you just need to make sure that everything is completely accurate, because the last thing you want to trip you up after you've submitted is an error or a mistake in the content. So there's a data verification mode built into the product, which allows you to go through at whatever level of granularity you want in your organization and verify that the information is true and correct and accurate. And so you can go through every single sentence of the submission if you wish, or you can just focus on those that have quantitative data or however you want to approach it. And as you go through them, you can log that they've been verified and that they're accurate. You can flag them if you notice any discrepancies or inaccuracies. And as you're clicking through every single sentence of your content, we're presenting the references to you right there in the window pane. So we know where all this content came from, not only the original source document, but down to the page, down to the sentence on the page. And so we'll, as you highlight each individual sentence, you will see the references that correspond to that sentence from your source document. If you click on any one of those, it's going to take you right back to the original page in the source document, so you can verify it with your own eyes. And in that way, we close the loop on the content. So you've uploaded source documents, you press a button to get a draft, you refine it, and then here we're coming full circle, making sure that what is ending up in your submission is true and accurate to what is in your source documents. So those are three of the major stages of the workflow here that we support in AutoIND. There's more that we could go into, but we're going to focus today on some case studies and not as much on the product. Happy to talk to any of you more about the product and show a demo if you'd like to get in touch with us afterwards. The result and the point of all of this is faster and easier submissions with less risk. And, we are still a young company. And so the data points that we have here are just a handful, but we do have some data. And what we've seen with our earliest customers are pictures like this. This is what it looks like working with AutoIND compared to the traditional way of approaching IND preparation, which is to do it manually with human writers exclusively. So obviously the biggest savings is on the drafting, and that's where we started. That's where there's the most to be gained in terms of reclaiming time here. But we are helping across the entire process. So from organizing your data, after you have that initial draft, doing the editing and refinement of subsequent drafts, doing the reviews, the data verification at the end, we have something to offer on each one of those to save some time for you and your team. And we have, one place where you can go through this entire process. You don't have to be jumping from one tool to another. So that is our product. That's AutoIND. And that is the overview that I'm going to give to you all today. Now I'm going to transition to our couple of case studies. So the first one here is Trace Biosciences. And so Trace was one of our earliest customers. They found us via one of our podcasts where one of our investors was speaking about us. Trace is a very small company. It was Connor and Nathan who reached out to us. They are just working now on their first IND. And so some of the key considerations that they had when they reached out to us were that it's their first IND. They don't have any sort of process around it. They need to figure out what is all the content that they need to pull together. How do they need to get it together? What's going to be looked for in different parts of the dossier. So just navigating their first IND and all the various aspects associated with that, which can be overwhelming, especially if you have no existing process. They're a small company and they are, investor backed, early stage. And so they're very cognizant of their costs and trying to ensure that those are managed. And you can incur significant costs working with consultants to get your submissions drafted and prepared and reviewed. And so that was a key aspect for the Trace team, and they're looking at AutoIND, was they're trying to ensure that was controlled. And finally, it's a small team and they have a lot to do, a lot to think about, and a lot to work on. And so they were very keen to minimize the burden on them when it came to creating the various summaries that are needed for the IND, ensuring that everything is accurate, and then iterating on that with their consultants. I will emphasize that they still were working with consultants, and that is something that we think is important. You need folks who have experience and can bring some judgment to bear, who've seen submissions in your modality, who can provide you advice on what to include, what not to include. AutoIND is not a replacement for that. It is a means to be much more efficient when it comes to drafting and iterating on the drafts. It's not a replacement for human judgment. So Trace was working with consultants who were, we were working with then indirectly and incorporating their feedback into the drafting via AutoIND. So I've given you some of the background here. The agent that Trace was working on, which is extremely cool, is a fluorescent nerve imaging agent for surgery. So the idea here is this can be administered before surgeries, makes the nerves in the patient fluoresce like you see in the image there, and that helps the surgeon avoid cutting those nerves when they're doing the surgery and avoid neuropathies and other post-surgical complications, which is a huge problem, afflicts 25 million people per year in the world. And so this is the very compelling problem that Trace was trying to address. When they came to us, a lot of their investigators brochure was already done with their consultants. Much of the M3 content they had already begun working on with their CDMO. And so at that time, what they were really interested in working on with us was all the Module 2 content and what remained of the Module 3 content. And so what the experience looked like with us for Trace is we had 1 day of setup and training, and it's just that fast and easy to get into AutoIND. We have a lot of folks who expect it to be considerably longer and more involved than that because of the types of tools that they're used to working with. For us, it's that fast to get up and going. We then, in the first 3 weeks, we had all of the content drafted. Each draft was only hours, maybe a day, but to pull all the data together, kind of find the time to do the drafting in the tool, that was 3 weeks overall, but that was probably hours of hands-on time for Nathan, who was doing most of the drafting here. We then took those drafts that were prepared in AutoIND, matter of hours, and then those were shared with Trace's consultants, who then, reviewed all the content, provided that important, human input and feedback on the higher level elements. This study should be included. This result should be highlighted. This is missing. And so consultants reviewed all of the content, gave feedback to Trace, to Nathan. And then Nathan, in many cases, just plugged that feedback directly into AutoIND because, again, we have that refinement capability. So you just take the comments from the consultants, plug them into the refinement, add more detail to this, be sure to describe X in this study, hit the refinement button, gets a new draft in seconds, and then he is good to go. Not everything is like that, but most things were like that. Because as you're doing the refinement, the AI has the source documents. So if there's something else you need to pull in there, it's no problem. So there's some back and forth then with the consultants and a couple iterations overall on the drafts in that way. And then we got to final content in under 2 months. So we felt like this is a pretty remarkable success given that 3 months for many folks that we've talked to is considered to be as good as it gets. And so for Trace, for their first IND to get 2 months to finalize content for the bits that we were helping them with, we're extremely happy with that. And so the upshot for Trace are these things. And so I pulled out some of the things that they shared with us that they really appreciated about the experience. And they fall into these 3 buckets. The first is the time savings, and that's certainly the headliner here. So first drafts in a matter of days. Once the feedback comes in from the consultants, then you get iterations on those drafts in minutes, and you don't have to do it. You don't have to go back to the source document, look for what they're talking about, pull that in, think about how to formulate it, write a new draft. You just press a button, read the new draft, and see if it's achieved the goal. And then new studies are coming in as the drafting is happening. Certain studies were initially omitted, but on feedback from the consultants, felt like those should be included. We're able to very rapidly and easily incorporate new studies, again, just pushing a button, getting another draft, tweaking and iterating and refining that in collaboration with the consultants. So very fast, every step of this, extremely fast. I think if I could speak for Nathan, that was awesome. And from a business perspective, very important and remarkable. It might be the case that, that Nathan more appreciated sort of the efficiency elements of this, the psychological elements of it. Not having to stare at a blank page and figure out what to write is huge. And that's something that we consistently hear across the board. So much easier to edit than it is to draft. And our first drafts are never perfect. They're never the thing that you want to submit to the agency right out of the box, but they get you started. Moreover, when each draft is just taking a few minutes, that freed Nathan up to go and focus on other things. And there's a million other things to work on and think about and work through, rather than summarizing studies in various ways for the IND. It also made it a lot easier to work with the consultants and faster, because you're not having to take feedback in, work on another draft over days or weeks, or have the consultant do it. You can just take the feedback, produce a new draft, send that over. And so the process becomes much more about reading and thinking and editing than it does about pressing keys on a keyboard and drafting. And we weren't entirely sure what to expect with the consultants here and what they're going to think about the quality of the content that we were drafting. We were pleasantly surprised to hear, and this was in the very earliest version of our product, that they were very pleased with the drafts that we had produced, that they read well, they presented most of the relevant information. They weren't perfect, but neither are first drafts from a human. And this was a wonderful surprise for us, that they were very pleased with the quality of that content right out of the gate. And so I will close on this bit about Trace with Nathan, you can hear from Nathan himself about how he felt about the experience. So I'm just going to play a little video clip here.
Companies, especially the smaller startups, should really consider working with AutoIND, because when you're on a lean team, the burn rate is so much more important. You don't have infinite funding. You're not a big pharma company. So anything you can do to decrease your time to market is increased value for your company.
So we're super happy that Nathan feels that way. We felt very lucky to work with them early on because they also make great collaborators, great partner as we were still developing the product. And the last note that I will leave with Trace here is that they're so thrilled with the experience with us overall that they are planning to come back. I don't think that there's a stronger testament to the product and the experience than that. As they're getting into their next IND next year, they're planning to build that on AutoIND as well. So that's one side of the spectrum, the small company experience. And if it's your first IND and you're resource limited and you need to go quickly so that you can, get into trials and raise your next round, that was the experience that Trace had. Now we'll look at the complete opposite end of the spectrum. And here we don't yet have the liberty of sharing the specific identity of the pharma that we're working with. So I will just describe things in a little bit of generalities. So this experience here is with a top 20 pharma. So global presence, extremely large team, many departments. They do work with consultants, but they also have extensive internal teams for every aspect of regulatory filing preparation. They have their own writers, they have their own ops teams, they do publishing and drafting in-house, and they do supplement that at times with consultants, but they have fully staffed in-house teams for preparing these filings. And they're going from preclinical all the way through post-market. So they're doing INDs, but then they're also, of course, supporting assets as they're progressing through clinical trials and then also in the post-clinical phase. So they're more concerned with other phases of the life cycle, and the nature of their concerns when it comes to the IND is different from Trace's. So the big drivers for this pharma is certainly efficiency. They want to be sure that they're getting from study report to submission as quickly as possible and doing that as efficiently as they can with the staff that they have. They're doing a lot of filings and they have a lot of different folks working on them, and consistency is a key concern for them. They want to try to be as consistent as possible in their approach. They want to be able to dictate that from a strategic level, how they draft the filings, how they, the voice that's used to present them, how efficiently the results are presented, and so on. And that's very hard to coordinate across large teams of people. So those are the big concerns that this pharma has, which I'm sure won't surprise you and are common to all of the large pharma companies. As we began talking to this pharma, there's kind of a few key features that emerged as things that we would have to deal with and work with them on and manage. One is that they already have well-established processes for doing what they're doing, and so there's not a clean slate here, a blank piece of paper where we're going to come in and say just use our product to do everything. We have to find the right ways and places to use AutoIND that play well with the other processes and software systems that they already have at play. As many people have been experiencing in the current economic climate, the organization is shifting. Folks are being shifted around. Some folks are leaving the company. Teams are being reorganized. And so there is a background of organizational change here that we had to work with. And something that everybody is experiencing, which is the imperative to do more with less. The goal for the number of filings that they're trying to get out, the number of INDs, has not changed. It's increasing. And yet the staff that they have to do that is staying the same. Finally, it's a very large organization, very conservative in their approach to change. So here we are coming in with a tool that uses AI to draft regulatory documents. There's huge potential for efficiency there and for speed, which they're very interested in. but there's a lot of skepticism within the organization. This particular organization we're working with, we're fortunate to have found a couple of visionary folks who see the potential and are motivated to pursue it and have been really wonderful champions on our behalf to help us navigate the organization. But most of the organization is skeptical and they want to see proof of the claims that we're making, rightfully so. And the big one when it comes to drafting regulatory filings is the content itself. It's great if you can shave, 50% off of the timeline and make it that much more efficient. But what is the content like? Is it accurate first and foremost? Is it complete? There's various considerations around the content and whether it is sufficient. And are they going to have to spend more time editing it and revising it such that it would just wash out the benefit of having it drafted by AI in the first place? So that is the big hurdle that we're having to overcome with this organization. We need to do that in a systematic and compelling way. And so what we decided to do is an experiment. And the experiment that we're doing together with this large pharma is we've taken 2 historical INDs that have previously been submitted, and we are attempting to recreate portions of those. And so we know what the right answer looks like. We know what the results should be here. We have something to compare to. So that puts us in a place where we can then take the same source documents that were used to draft the human written IND. We can put those through AutoIND and create drafts automatically, and then we can compare the 2. And so we took these 2 INDs. One was a biologic, one was a small molecule. The sum total of the source documents that we used here were 61 PDFs in the one case, 58 in the other. Together, they comprised almost 30,000 pages of source information that had to be summarized for the purpose of the IND. We did that. This was focused just on the non-clinical summaries, but we took that input and between 2.5 and 3.5 hours, turned all of that into a first draft of an IND. So 3 documents, 80 pages. And by our estimation, that would be weeks or potentially even months to get to a first draft, approaching this a more conventional way. So to be able to get it in hours, we felt very good about that. Now, again, it's the first draft. It's not the final draft. It requires additional work on top of this, but this is a wonderful place to start. We then took that content that we produced with AutoIND, and we are now in the process of comparing that to a traditionally prepared IND, meaning humans wrote it, reviewed it, iterated on it, and ultimately finalized it. One of the problems that we had to solve in order to do that is to figure out how to do this comparison. And this isn't really a problem that people have had to solve previously in a rigorous and systematic way. And so what we did with this pharma partner was we came up with a rubric of what are the key aspects that are important here. We didn't write this. The medical writers on the pharma team wrote this. So this is what is important to them. And this was given to us. And they said, this is what we care about. And this is how we're going to be evaluating the content. And it makes a lot of sense. Correctness is at the top of the list. You don't want any errors or fabrications sneaking into the submission from your source documents. You then, of course, want to ensure that it's complete, that all the information that's necessary is there. You want to be efficient with your reader's attention. So you don't want a lot of redundancy. You want to be concise with the language. The verbiage needs to be very clear and emphasize the narrative that the company wants to emphasize. So we created this rubric and we're scoring, and there's a scoring system behind this. And so we're taking the human written IND, the AI generated content, and we're scoring them each respectively in a blinded fashion. And we're going to see how the 2 bits of content stack up together. Unfortunately, I don't have the results just yet to report to you on this. We're kind of right in the midst of this study right now. What I can tell you based off of the initial feedback that we've gotten, which is very qualitative and isn't yet applying that rubric that I just showed you, but this is from those medical writers that we're working with. They found the experience of working with AutoIND extremely pleasant and intuitive. And this harkens back to Nathan's experience with Trace, where, it just takes a day to get started and get going and get your first drafts. Very easy and intuitive to use. The verbiage that the writers were seeing, they liked. They hadn't, in the initial evaluation, they hadn't yet read it deeply and evaluated it thoroughly using the rubric. But just the spit take was, this reads well, it's grammatically accurate, it makes sense. So that was a great start. And they had a great experience as well iterating on the content. So again, we don't expect the first draft to be the final draft. As we went through iterations with them, introduced them to the refinement tool, introduced them to the templates, they would tell us, we need more detail like this. We want these summaries structured in this way. And within minutes, we would just update a template, show them a new version, and they'd be like, yes, like that. So it's just minutes to iterate, and it improves rapidly, for the specific style in which they're trying to create their submissions here. This study, we are planning to do a peer-reviewed publication of it, and that will be coming in 2025. So I look forward to sharing that more with you all next year. And once we do get it published and we have all the results quantified and everything else, we're very excited to be able to show that and talk about it. So those are my two case studies. The two ends of the spectrum, very small drug company, very large pharma company. And there are three things that I want to be sure to leave you all with from my presentation here today. The first is AI can return time to you. So that is what we're all about here. We want to make humans better and faster and make their lives easier. And what we're offering with AutoIND, and we think the lens that everyone should look at AI with, is it's giving time back to you so you can do more or better. So in our case, that means faster submissions, less effort from your team, or less cost from consultants. I touched at the beginning on, or I mentioned that it's less risky to do it this way. And I hinted at the ways in which it's less risky throughout the talk here, but I just wanted to bring it home here that if you're spending less time opening source documents, with your PhD team, flipping through PDFs and looking for data in tables and taking it from this table and putting it into that table, or taking this verbiage and rewriting it again in a slightly more concise and succinct way. If they're not doing those tasks, then they can instead spend their time thinking about what you're writing, thinking about your program and where you are in the process, and have you addressed all the questions that you're likely to be asked from health authorities? Is this a compelling narrative? Does it hold together? Is it cohesive? Is the data interpretation sound? All of the higher order thinking that is going to increase the quality of your submission and reduce the risks. Your team is going to have a lot more time at that. With the dollars that you are spending on consultants, you can have them thinking about that, working on that, rather than pressing keys on a keyboard. So not only is this a faster and more cost-effective way to produce your submissions, it's also less risky. And this is not, AI is a tool. You're in control. This is AutoIND is a means to extend your team's capabilities, judgment, interpretation, experience, and to stretch it further, make it more effective, make it more potent. You still need your team to wield the tools here. You're still going to be responsible for your submission. You still need to understand what's in there, be thinking about it, be sure that you're putting the best, most compelling story forward. And AI and AutoIND are just tools that are going to help you do that faster and better. But at the end of the day, the product is still going to be a reflection of you and your team. And so we want to help you be faster and more efficient, and we want to help you learn how to use these new tools to become more effective. So that's what I've got for you all today. I hope it was helpful, informative to be able to learn a little bit about the product that we're building, some of the experiences that our earliest customers have had. I'd be happy to take a few questions now, if there are any.
Thanks, Brandon, for that insightful session. We actually do have some questions. I'll start off with the first one here that goes back to your AutoIND overview. Has Weave started to take ECTD 4.0 into consideration yet?
Yes, in fact, a couple of the farmers that we've been talking to so far have that specific need and concern. So as we've been building AutoIND, we have not yet built it around ECTD 4.0, but we have built it in a way where it's very straightforward for us to make that transition. And when you're in when you have a platform where generating content is a matter of pushing a button, it becomes much more straightforward to translate content from, an older regime to a newer regime, whether that means restructuring it or reformulating it in terms of the information that's presented, and is it more or less detailed or presented in a different way. So all that to say, yes, we have been thinking about ECTD 4.0. It's on a roadmap to get into more next year, and it's much more straightforward to make that transition with this kind of a system, in our view.
Great, thank you. Next question, which refers back to the Trace case study. Were special authoring templates used for authoring, and what information was provided by consultants, and in what format to start the authoring of the first draft?
That's a great question. So in Trace's case, they began from our baseline templates. So we have templates that we've created, again, based off of guidance and examples for all of the sections and modules within AutoIND. That's what Trace began with in our case. They drafted all of the initial content and then sent those initial drafts to their consultants. So that was sort of like the first interaction that the consultants were having with the content. They then left comments on the content, returned those to Trace, and then Trace used them to further iterate on the content within AutoIND. So that's one way to do it. That's the way that Trace did it. What we have been increasingly getting into as time has gone on is we've encountered many people who do have their own templates, whether those are in-house or coming from consultants. And we are able, and in many cases are using those templates coming from our customers for their baseline. So you can have all of your own templates in the system. You can take the existing templates that you have. We can use those to create your first AutoIND templates, which will be specific to you, private to you and your organization. And that can be your starting point. And you can then use those to iterate and build and refine.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Next question, going back to AutoIND. Any hurdles with workflow of generating individual study summaries in the IB and foregoing module 2.6?
I love that question because you get it for free, essentially. So if you're the way that we produce the IB within AutoIND is you upload your source documents, you then create your module 2 summaries, and then when you go to generate your IB, it is using as its input the content that's in your module 2 summaries. And we do it that way so that for two reasons. One is for consistency, so that what you're talking about in your IB is the same thing that you're talking about in your module 2 summaries, and minimizes the risk of inconsistencies creeping in. And so that when we have to update content one place in the dossier, we can more easily update it in all of the places. So if you are referring to a particular study in your module 2 summaries and in your IB, we know that they're connected. And so if you make a change to this one in module 2 or this one in the IB, we can then propagate that change to the other place. So the reason I say all that is to say you get your module 2 summaries for free. if you're just generating an IB, or vice versa. You're just, pushing a button and then getting the initial content, and then you push another button and then you have your IB. So if you don't want your module 2 summaries, that's fine. You can just ignore them, but they will be there because they're on the way to producing the IB.
While we're talking about Module 2, another question's come in. How is Module 2 content pulled from source documents? Do reports need to be standardized, or are metadata added in standardized method for the tool to pull information correctly to generate the first draft?
So the only hard requirement, strict requirement that we have for source documents today is that they have to be PDFs. Outside of that, we will be adding support for further file formats as we go. But if it's a PDF and if it's structured so that a human can read it and understand it, we've yet to encounter a case where the system couldn't take it in and use it to produce content. That means it can be a digital PDF, it can be a scanned PDF, even some handwritten content, as long as it's reasonably legible, can be incorporated as input. And it doesn't have to be formatted or structured in any particular way. Most of the reports we get are standardized to some extent. They're all scientific studies, and so they have the intro, materials, methods, results, discussion, structure, but there isn't any special requirement there. Now, we have certainly encountered cases where in order to get a particular, like formulation of the content or detail, it helps to format your source document in a certain way, add some verbiage to the source document so that the system can have a better understanding of what does this table mean, for example. So there are a few cases like that, but they tend to be marginal. Most of the time it works perfectly right out of the box.
And speaking of tables, can AutoIND pull in text tables and figures from source non-clinical study reports, or is it limited to narrative text generation?
So in terms of information that we're using from source documents today, it is any of the text and tables in a source document. So we're not yet directly pulling in figures or using figures from source documents, but all of the text and tables we're bringing in. And then when it comes to producing content in the submission, we are producing, it's the same story. We're producing text, so narrative summaries of information from study reports, development reports, batch records, and so on, and tables. We can, and when it comes to tables, we can do something as straightforward as just pull in a table from a source document verbatim and just drop it into your IND submission, or we can generate brand new tables, synthesize new tables by extracting, various pieces of information from the source documents, constructing a table, and then populating it using that information. And that's the approach we use for the tabulated summaries, for example, to summarize every study in a given section.
As we are close to time, I'd like to thank everyone for your great questions. Before we wrap up, I'd like to remind you that the webinar recording will be shared with all registered attendees, so you can revisit the content or share it with colleagues. We'd also love your feedback. Please take a moment to complete the short survey that you will be emailed shortly. Your input helps us improve and ensure we're delivering the content that matters most to you. Thank you again for spending some time with us today, and on behalf of the entire Weave team, thank you and have a great day. Thanks, Brandon, for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you, Tammy, and thank you all for coming. Hope to hear from you. Please reach out if you'd like to learn more or see a demo.